What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best gaming related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. Topic number one of the day, guys, I wanted to talk about Civilization, a game and a series in which has kind of dated back since 1991 and really has seen a lot of peaks and valleys, like a lot of series that we talk about here on the YouTube channel. Well, I want to talk about what happened to Civilization and what could we expect for the future. So let's talk about it. So guys, like I said, this is a series, guys, that is a strategy game that, of course, dates all the way back to 1991. And so if you look at the release timeline, you got 1991 is when the original Civilization came out, and then a few years later, you had Colonization come out. Civ 2 or Civilization 2 came out in 1996, and then along the way, guys, had some different names for this series. Not only like Colonization, then you had CivNet, you had Civ City Rome, you had Civilization Revolution, Civilization 3, 4, 5, and then of course 6. Now, of course, there were expansions along the way that came out, that being like Civilization Beyond Earth, Civilization Revolution 2. So you had a number of different expansions. So between 1991 and 2016, you have a number of the main games, that being 6 in total, but then you also had, of course, the expansions. Now, here's the interesting thing is we haven't had a new Civilization since Civilization 6 back in 2016. Now, there is, of course, the latest release being Civilization 6 Gathering Storm, an expansion for Civilization 6. But I think the big question, guys, is a lot of people have asked, what happened to this franchise? Because it was a franchise that obviously had some significant peaks and then it had some valleys as well, that being like some of the expansions weren't very well received. Some of the reception wasn't very good either for some of these games as well. And so in 1996, Next Generation listed the series as number 4 on their top 100 games of all time, commenting that Sid Meier's goal was to give players the chance to play God, and he succeeded admirably. So here's the thing. Civilization is considered to have introduced the defining elements of that genre, in particular the complexity of interlocking gameplay systems introduced in the first Civilization game. So really, guys, when Civilization first came out, this was a series that was like redefining and kind of like really innovating the strategy genre at that time. And over time, a lot of times though, guys, you'll notice like in a lot of different video games, sometimes it's really hard to kind of hit on what all of those other games in the past did so well and try to almost reimagine and try to continue innovating as you go. And I think Civilization was just kind of one of those games where there were times where they were trying to kind of raise the bar, so to speak, in the series, but they just weren't able to do those things and didn't meet quite expectations. And I think that there have been certainly very good additions to Civilization. I think there's absolutely no debate about that. I actually really enjoy a lot of the games. I even enjoy Civilization 6 at this point. But where is Civilization 7? Are we going to be getting that at some point or another? If we look at between Civilization 5 and 6, you got about 6 years between the two of them. And then between Civ 4 and 5, you have 5 years. And then 4 between Civ 3 and Civ 4, and so on and so forth. So it's not like there's like significant stretches of time between these games. Besides really Civilization 2 and Civilization 3, one coming out in 96, the other coming out in 2001. So what I'm getting at here, guys, is it's, 2016 to now, obviously we're getting around that time frame where you would think we're probably going to start hearing some rumors about a Civilization 7. The question is, guys, do you think Civilization as a franchise still holds enough of those values and such of the game and enough of that groundwork that they built for so many years to continue the franchise and it be super successful? I think they do. I certainly think Civilization is a very successful franchise at this point, even though it's had some ups and downs. But guess what, guys? Even the best and biggest franchises out there, like the Call of Duties of the world, World of Warcraft, and a number of other games that have continued and tested time as far as just how many, the sheer amount of games they've brought out in those franchises, even like the Final Fantasies of the world. There's always been games that haven't been as good as some of the predecessors or whatever the case might be. So I think that when you look at Civilization as a franchise, you have to look at it from a couple of aspects. There has been some, titles that haven't been as good. Then there's others that are ranked as some of the best, like, all time. So when you look at those things, I really trust and I believe in like the publishers as well as the developers of this franchise. And I really think that there is going to be a Civilization 7. So for those of you who are excited and are really hoping for continuations of this franchise, if Gathering Storm doesn't quench your thirst, I think a Civ 7 is going to be coming out in the foreseeable future, probably in the next couple of years, I would say. But I think, guys, what happened with this franchise is like so many other franchises we talk here on the YouTube channel. There's, of course, lots of peaks, there's some valleys, but all in all, there's a consistent trend upwards and forwards in this franchise. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think of Civilization as a franchise? What do you think kind of happened? Where do you think the turning point was? Which game do you think was kind of the point where things started kind of go south in the franchise? And then what game brought it back? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And for more Civilization content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. Doom Eternal has gotten so many people out there excited and like so invigorated for this franchise. A franchise, guys, that came out with Doom 2016, kind of reinvented itself and did some things incredibly well. Whether we're talking the campaign, the mechanics of the game, of course, that being, the multiplayer modes and all the different modes that they added within Doom 2016 really laid a foundation for the future of the Doom franchise. Then you skip ahead to Doom Eternal. This is a game that people are calling the best first-person shooter ever made, and others stating that it's one of the best ever made. And so I want to kind of talk about, is Doom Eternal one of, if not the best first-person shooter game ever made? In my personal opinion, guys, I'm just going to give you the quick answer. I don't believe it's the best ever made. Now, I will say it's a great shooter. I mean, look, as a guy who loves first-person and third-person shooter games, I'm going to say that Doom Eternal, it really does what any video game or massive AAA title wants to do, and that is it kind of sucks you in and gets you wanting to come back for more. Whether you're talking about the campaign, which is very well done, the best in the series in my personal opinion, and then on top of that, a multiplayer mode, that being battle mode, which is very different, very interesting, kind of innovative in a way. It kind of reminds me of games similar to that of like Evolve or, Dead by Daylight, and games like that where it's, this 2v1, 3v1, or you're trying to escape and things of that nature, similar to like these kind of arena-based multiplayer modes. All in all, though, when you buy Doom Eternal, it's a game that I preach on this channel consistently as to buying games that are full package deals. And what we mean by that, guys, is when you buy a game for $60 plus tax, you're going to want something where there's not just a single player experience, not just a multiplayer experience, not just a co-op experience. It's got pretty much everything. It's got the best of all those worlds put into one, and it gives you hundreds upon hundreds of hours that you can put into this particular game and really enjoy it, not only with your friends, but by yourself when you want to, of course, just play some of the story missions. You want to just play multiplayer by yourself, that being battle mode, or play with, strangers over, Xbox Live or PlayStation, and then PlayStation Network. And it's just a very interesting experience. Now, what I will say is it's certainly probably going to be the top of first-person shooter this year. Obviously, we're going to have to kind of wait and see, as the year goes, what other games we kind of are able to kind of talk about. That being like Cyberpunk 2077, what's that going to be like as far as a shooter is concerned, even though it got RPG elements and things of that nature. Also, Call of Duty Black Ops 5, or whatever the game is going to be called at this point, the new Black Ops game. That, of course, guys, is another one that I would say is going to be up there as one of the best shooters of this year if it's, of course, made, and done well and in the right way. And I'm sure that Treyarch is going to do exactly that. So with that being said, I'm going to say that Doom Eternal very well, probably, when we have the Game Awards that come out, next year, I would certainly say that it's going to be nominated for Best First-Person Shooter, or Best Shooter of the Year, and it probably will win. There's a good chance it's going to win because of the buzz around it, because of all the hype, and then it really delivered on that hype for many people, myself included. Now, Best First-Person Shooter ever made all time is a whole nother thing, guys, and I think you could go down a list of so many different games that could be on, one of the best ever, right? I mean, I look at Call of Duty, guys, and of course I'm biased because it's one of my favorite series, and I look at Call of Duty, it comes out consistently every single year, and they're always trying to up the bar and up those standards on Call of Duty's front, whether you're talking about adding new features to the game like Warzone, which is, of course, a massive game mode. You're talking, of course, all of the new modes, the new multiplayer modes, and the campaign being so gritty and gruesome at times, and just always trying to up the bar every year, though. And Doom Eternal, not saying that they're not able to do that, but this is a game that comes out, every 4 to 5 years, most likely moving forward. Now, what's awesome about Doom Eternal is because of the success of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, we're most likely going to have continued Doom games, which is incredible. This is a franchise that deserves to coexist with other shooters in gaming at this point and for the foreseeable future, without a doubt. So, will I say that it's probably going to be one of, if not the best first-person shooter this year? Yeah, I might go there. I don't know if I'm going to go where it's best first-person shooter all time, because there's so many other franchises out there and games that have proven themselves at times. Whether we're talking the older Halo games, you're talking Call of Duty, even the games this year like Cyberpunk 2077. It's so hard to really pinpoint one game over another, and I would say that Doom is now, for sure, now going to be one of those most talked about shooters. When we talk about shooters as a whole, when you're talking about the Call of Duties of the world, the Halos of the world, you're going to be also talking about Doom. It's going to be in those same sentences when we're talking about shooters and what we're really anticipating, what we're excited for, and comparing current shooters or future shooters to other games in the past. Doom Eternal would be one of those that you would compare a lot of future shooters to, just because of the way they've made these games, and they've done such a good job. So massive kudos over to ID, over to Bethesda. They have done such a great job, and of course Bethesda coming off of the Fallout 76 and everything that went wrong there, it's awesome to see that they've got a franchise in Doom that seems like it's really starting to pave a road for itself moving forward, and I'm excited to see where this franchise goes, guys. But I want to know from all of you, do you agree with some of the critics that are stating that this is the best first-person shooter ever made? Others stating that's the best first-person shooter, of course, this year or since recent memory. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Let me know in the comment section below. And for more Doom Eternal videos and content, stay here with Zero TV. Saints Row is a franchise that was a lot of fun, guys. It was very, at times was really over the top, but Saints Row as a franchise really embraced those things. And I think, guys, there is an actual need, and a lot of people within this community want to see a return to Saints Row. So let's talk about what happened to Saints Row, and could we see a continuation of this franchise in the future? So guys, from 2006 to 2015, we had, of course, Saints Row 2, Saints Row the Third, Saints Row 4, and then Saints Row Gat Out of Hell, which was a standalone expansion for Saints Row 4. So of course, guys, when you look at this, you have 4 main games, right? You have 4 of the main games, which pretty much it ended off in 2013. So it's been a long time since we have seen anything regarding Saints Row. Saints Row Gat Out of Hell, which was the standalone expansion for Saints Row 4, that came out in 2015. And so even with that, it's been a while since we saw Saints Row. So I think the big thing, guys, is that poor sales seem to actually kind of hurt this franchise, and I think that we can talk about that, as well as there was canceled games in this franchise as well, which is really unfortunate. I think that there was certainly I think there's been a want and a need for Saints Row to continue, just because this is an over-the-top action-adventure game that people did really enjoy, but was it like oversaturated at some point or another? So Saints Row 2 shipped over 2 million units for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 during October of 2008, the month of its release. On November 2nd, 2011, THQ CEO Brian Farrell announced that Saints Row III was already the most pre-ordered title in series history. The game had 4 times the number of pre-orders Saints Row 2 had 2 weeks before its launch. THQ estimated the game would ship over 3 million units before the publisher's fiscal year ends in March 2012. By comparison, Saints Row 2 launched in October 2008 and sold 2.6 million by the end of the fiscal year. On January 25th, 2012, THQ announced that the third had shipped 3.8 million units globally and are expecting to ship between 5 and 6 million units lifetime on the title. To date, the series has roughly sold over 13 million units, including over 3 million for Saints Row 2. So look, here's the thing. Obviously, a few of these games sold very well, but I really think it came to Saints Row, the fourth one, and then, of course, Gat Out of Hell. Those 2 games that when they came out, obviously one a standalone expansion, and then Saints Row 4, those 2 just didn't really do very well as far as sales are concerned. Now, I'm sure that the sales for those 2 were better, would be a great thing for a lot of studios out there, but for THQ that's expecting really good numbers for this franchise, that was a really, obviously unfortunate and not such a great number that they were hitting on those couple of fronts. Now, there was a spin-off title, Saints Row Undercover, was being developed by Savage Entertainment for the PSP in 2009 but was canceled. On January 22nd, 2016, Volition found a prototype of the game in a PSP development kit and released it as a free download on Unseen64.net. Saints Row Money Shot was to be a spin-off the main series originally developed for Xbox Live Arcade. The game would be available for the Xbox 360 as an Xbox Live Arcade game and for the PlayStation 3 as a PlayStation Network game featuring 3D graphics. The game would have been tied to Saints Row III as part of the marketing campaign for the game. Playing Saints Row Money Shot would have unlocked exclusive content for use in Saints Row III and vice versa. Other canceled games include a Nintendo 3DS title announced at E3 2010 called Saints Row Drive-By and Kinect PlayStation Move fighting game for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 called Saints Row The Cooler. So look, guys, here's the thing. I believe that Saints Row is a franchise that really needed to just focus on the main titles in the franchise. I think when you're trying to go off and do all these other different, ways in which to try to connect with the franchise, whether that be on the PSP or Xbox Live Arcade or whatever it might have been, it's just really they should have been focusing fully on the main, titles in the franchise and continuing from there. Now, look, I get the reason why they were doing it. It's quite simple. Number one is that this was selling a lot of copies at the time. And then number 2, they wanted, to, of course, have a lot of those money grabs where they're getting people to buy into other, parts of the franchise, that being like on the PSP or whether it's on, obviously, Xbox Live Arcade. Whatever it might have been, the idea is that they're trying to get you to connect with the franchise and at the same time try to make some quick money. And the thing about it though, guys, is it doesn't work for every single franchise. And here's the thing. I went on Quora, guys, and there was a guy who went ahead and made a post. It was, what happened to Saints Row? Why were the 4 games so poorly received? Could we see it make a return in the future? What would Saints Row 5 look like? Will the series ever see the greatness the second and third of the series had been elevated to? Now, I don't know. Like, sure, they were poorly received, but I think it was more like the 4th one and then Gat Out of Hell that people were just kind of getting sick and tired and fed up with the Saints Row series at that point. But that doesn't mean that those first few games were not really beloved by a lot of people. So here's the thing. I think, guys, what it really comes down to is what happened to this franchise is that there was a couple of games, really one standalone expansion, and then, of course, one, game main expansion or main addition to the franchise. Saints Row 4 is really what happened, and it hurt the franchise pretty big. And really, Saints Row was on this trajectory that it could have been kind of like the next thing to like Grand Theft Auto or some of these other games. It kind of reminded me of like Mafia, except, obviously more of like a modern Mafia and more kind of ridiculous kind of Mafia game. It had some really interesting formulas, had some very interesting mechanics to the game that I really thought were awesome. And a lot of people out there definitely agree with me because the community definitely wants another game. Well, in an article, guys, that was written by Forbes by Paul Tassi, it says the Saints Row series has a special place in my heart as the second and third games are some of my favorites of all time. At least in my top 20, top 30 anyway, I like them. The series has long been dormant, with Saints Row 4 last arriving in 2013. But THQ Nordic has announced in an investor report that Volition is deep in development on the next full installment in the Saints Row franchise. In effect, Saints Row 5, even if it's not called that precisely. This will be a bit of a get back on its feet moment for Volition, who veered away from Saints Row to do a game set in an adjacent universe in the form of Agents of Mayhem. I actually thought the core fundamentals of Agents of Mayhem was pretty good, but it seemed like a game that ran out of development time and was released with too much content copy and paste and not enough depth to round it out. I actually thought Saints Row 4 had a similar problem, as it was more or less just Saints Row 3 recycled, adding superpowers and aliens to the mix, a far smaller jump than we saw from 2 to 3. 6 years after 4, it stands to reason that Saints Row 5 should be another big leap forward and is theoretically a next-gen game, considering that we're just a year out from PS5 and Xbox Series X. So, I definitely 100% agree with this. A lot of this stuff that he was saying, like, really, a lot of Saints Row 4 was like this copy and paste of 3, and it kind of felt like even more of the same with Gat Out of Hell. It really felt, guys, that it just got a little bit too ridiculous with 4 and Gat Out of Hell, and I think that's part of the reason people just kind of got a little bit turned off by the franchise. Now, I also wonder how much of Saints Row 5's humor will land in 2019, even though obviously, guys, it'll be like probably later 2020 or 2021 when we actually hear word of this game, and then probably it'll be 2021 or 2022 when the game probably releases. I've also recently asked this question about Borderlands 3, but I think Borderlands has better writing than Saints Row overall. Saints Row was at its best when it was pushing the whole family angle of its team, which made it feel like a more wacky version of, say, the Fast and Furious squad, but the actual jokes are where things kind of went off the rails, sometimes in a fun way, but often in a cringy way, and that will be an even harder line to walk all these years later when maybe you can't get away with the same kind of stuff and not take heat for it. Regardless, I'm certainly excited for the prospect of a fully new Saints Row game, even if I'm not quite sure what to be expecting at the end of this long, winding road to a new sequel. So, it sounds like Saints Row 5 is confirmed at this point, guys. It sounds like this is a franchise that's confirmed. It's going to be coming. And it sounds like it's going to at least begin a continuation here. Now, where is that going to go? It's so hard to say. We can only say, guys, that at least if you're a huge fan of the franchise, it's at least coming back. And that's going to be, it might be the last go-around for Volition as far as this franchise goes. Their last chance at really getting it right and making a really solid entry in the franchise. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you want to see out of Saints Row 5? I know most of you probably know what I want. I want to have a really good story, even if it's goofy, a fun multiplayer, as well as maybe some co-op modes. Give me a full package. Make it Saints Row 5 or whatever it might be called, and I'll be excited to play that without a doubt. But let me know, like I said, what you guys would like to see in Saints Row 5. And for more Saints Row 5 videos and content, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.